Usually when we talk about being a good person, there's this unspoken assumption that it requires a certain amount of bleeding.
Oh, absolutely. Like, you have to sacrifice yourself.
Right. You have to put yourself last. You have to be perfectly altruistic all the time. And honestly, for anyone out there trying to navigate a chaotic world, that pressure can lead to incredible burnout.
Yeah, it is exhausting trying to be perfectly selfless, constantly.
It really is. But what if you hired a financial advisor for your soul?
A financial advisor. I like
Yeah, like someone who sat you down, looked at your moral portfolio, and said, hey, stop trying to be noble. It's time to start looking out for number one.
just maximizing your cosmic ROI.
Exactly. Maximizing your cosmic return on investment. And that totally upends the traditional moral compass. We're so conditioned to view self-interest and virtue as exact opposites, right?
Right. I mean, you're either selfish or you're good. There's no in between.
Exactly. We rarely consider that pure selfishness could be the exact engine driving objectively good behavior.
And that binary is exactly what we are throwing out the window today in this deep dive.
Yep, we're testing that exact framework by jumping into an essay from October 2006. It's by Dia Form Buddha, titled Hatred Will Destroy Oneself, and the translation we're looking at was edited by Kinyu.
And this text, it basically serves as an operating manual for a completely different spiritual economy.
Our mission today is to really unpack this worldview where radical, just pure, unadulterated selfishness is presented as the ultimate logical driver for virtuous action.
Yeah, and the author establishes this operating system from the very first paragraph. I mean, they loudly declare that they are selfish, that they lack virtue, and that they care only about ascending to the heavenly kingdom.
Which is such a jarring way to open an essay, right?
It really is.
Especially one that ultimately advocates for, environmental protection and spreading love and fulfilling your family duties.
Well, the author views their earthly life as the site of what they call life's greatest transaction.
The greatest transaction.
Right.
That sounds like Wall Street, but for eternity.
That's pretty much what it is. The goal is to accumulate merits and treasures in the human world to enjoy the ultimate bliss of life. And they spell that with capital L-I-F-E up in heaven.
So how does this transaction actually work?
So the mechanics of it are highly calculated. The author explains that they intend to establish the era of Lifechanyuan for humanity.
Okay, life change.
Yeah, think of Lifechanyuan as a new paradigm, right? Or a spiritual era where humanity learns to revere what the author calls the greatest creator, as well as life and nature.
Got it.
By walking in this specific way of the greatest creator, the author states that nature will then nurture them and all life will care for them.
So they're explicitly calculating a trade-off here.
Exactly. They're exchanging a finite human existence with all its suffering for infinite life and unparalleled returns in a heavenly realm. The text literally states, such a deal is not one I would ever pass up.
I mean, I hear the logic, but I have a hard time getting past the terminology.
How so?
Well, if your self-interest results in you honoring nature and guiding humanity to revere life and doing all these objectively positive things, aren't you just doing good, but slapping a controversial label on it?
I see what you mean.
Like, it just feels like a really provocative rebranding of traditional altruism.
It sounds like it, but the distinction the author makes lies entirely in the motivation, which they believe dictates the metaphysical outcome.
Okay, walk me through that.
Traditional altruism requires you to care about the other person or the cause for its own sake. You help a struggling neighbor because you empathize with their struggle, right?
You feel for them.
Exactly. But the author is saying they help the neighbor specifically so that the greatest creator will favor them.
Oh, wow. So it's fundamentally an exchange.
Yes, completely devoid of sacrifice. They are just making a calculated deposit into their own heavenly bank account.
That really changes the entire emotional texture of doing the right thing.
It really does.
But if the ultimate goal is just to win this cosmic transaction, how does the author handle, day-to-day earthly responsibilities? If you're just biding your time until heaven, do you just ignore your family and your community?
Actually, far from it. The framework demands flawless execution of those duties. But again, the engine driving it is different.
Okay, so they're still doing the chores, so to speak.
Right. The author states they honor their parents, care for their siblings, raise their children conscientiously, and repay all their debts to friends and strangers.
And the reason is?
To avoid reincarnation.
Right, because the text mentions that unpaid debts act as anchors.
Exactly.
If you owe a debt to nature or to your parents or your spouse or even just some stranger on the street, You are physically and spiritually tied to the human world.
Yeah, the author believes that as long as debts remain unpaid in the human world, they simply cannot ascend to the heavenly kingdom.
They'd be forced to reincarnate to pay them back.
Right. A debt is viewed as a literal metaphysical tether.
It makes me think of treating human life like a cosmic checkout counter.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, imagine you have a cart full of experiences, and you're trying to leave the store, which means transcending this world. But you cannot walk through those sliding doors until your receipt shows a balance of exactly zero.
Not a penny more or less.
Exactly. If you shortchange the cashier or if you owe $5 to your neighbor, you have $5 worth of metaphysical gravity keeping you here.
The alarm goes off at the door?
Yep, the alarm goes off, the doors lock, and you have to go all the way back through the store again.
And the lengths the author will go to in order to keep that balance at absolute zero are pretty extreme. The text provides this really vivid illustration. They say, even if I must eat dry grass, I wish to produce milk. Even if I must drink dirty water, I aspire to exude the fragrance of wine.
Wow. I mean, producing milk from dry grass is a beautiful image, but it sounds exhausting to live that way.
It does, but the justification provided is entirely centered on risk management.
Risk management.
Yeah, the author explains that by acting flawlessly, by absorbing the dry grass without complaint, their own heart remains calm and free from fear and anxiety.
So morality is just stripped of its emotional weight entirely.
Pretty much. It's treated purely as a strategy to maintain inner peace and, secure their departure.
And I noticed that risk management strategy also dictates their relationship with the environment.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a very strict rule in the text regarding nature. The author avoids harming animals or destroying their habitats. But if you look at the underlying mechanism, it's not born from a sense of ecological stewardship or, like, feeling sad for the animals.
Not at all. Harming animals is framed as sowing the seeds of disaster. Benefiting at an animal's expense creates an immediate debt.
Right.
The author notes, I do not wish to owe animals and risk being reborn into their realm to repay that debt.
So you aren't saving the rainforest because you care about the monkeys. You're saving the rainforest because you are terrified that if you destroy it, the cosmos will force you to reincarnate as a monkey to pay off the karmic property damage.
Exactly. Stripping the emotion out of morality leaves behind this highly pragmatic system. You protect the environment to protect your own future non-material assets.
Okay, so we've established that physical debts, like harming an animal or shortchanging a neighbor, anchor you to the earth.
Right.
But the author argues that non-physical debts are just as dangerous, which brings us to how they view internal poisons.
This is a huge part of the essay.
Yeah, because the title of this essay isn't Unpaid Debts Will Trap You. The title is Hatred Will Destroy Oneself. So how does a philosophy of radical selfishness handle trauma or anger or getting wronged by someone else?
Well, the author shares a very literal anecdote to explain this. They describe standing in front of a mirror and noticing that when they were happy, their reflection appeared beautiful.
Okay.
But when they were filled with hatred, their reflection became ugly and repulsive.
Which makes sense. I mean, think about the last time you were genuinely furious. If you caught a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, your face was likely contorted, tense. It's a very visceral, physical change.
Yeah, and the author takes that visceral observation and applies it to the mechanics of their heavenly application.
How so?
In their cosmology, celestials in the heavenly kingdom are inherently beautiful. Therefore, if the author allows hatred to make them ugly, there will be no place for them in heaven.
Ah, so outward ugliness is a deal breaker.
Exactly. They argue that outward ugliness is a direct reflection of inner flaws. It warps the non-material architecture of what they call one's life structure.
So they resolutely reject hatred just to stay structurally beautiful enough for ascension.
Yes, it's entirely self-preservation.
And they apply this logic directly to actual hardship, which is where the framework becomes, well, incredibly difficult to digest.
Yeah, this part is tough.
The text states that if their life is filled with hardships, if they're deceived or bullied, it is not the fault of others. They ascribe it to the result of their own life trajectory or destiny.
Right.
They refuse to seek revenge or even assign blame. And I really have to linger on this because my immediate human reaction is heavy skepticism.
I think anyone would feel that way.
Right. Letting a bully off the hook and saying the abuse is just your destiny feels deeply uncomfortable. It sounds like a form of self-imposed victim blaming, or a way to insulate yourself from the messy reality of the world by just pretending bad people aren't responsible for their bad actions.
It is the central tension of the essay, and you're right, it is undeniably unsettling. But to understand the mechanism here, we have to look at the author's ultimate priority, which is the preservation of their own non-material perfection.
Okay, explain that.
The author is not arguing that the bully's actions are objectively right or morally acceptable. They're arguing that engaging with the bully, harboring hatred, and plotting revenge requires drinking poison.
Because that poison deforms their life structure.
Exactly. Bearing grudges is viewed as profound self-sabotage. The essay explicitly states, to harbor hatred is to destroy oneself.
Wow.
By reframing the bullying as merely a part of their own destiny, they completely remove the other person's power over their internal state.
They aren't absolving the bully for the bully's sake.
No, the bully's fate is totally irrelevant to them. They are just neutralizing the emotional threat to themselves to keep their heavenly application pristine.
It's a single-player game.
Very much so.
They are entirely unconcerned with justice in the human world because engaging in human justice traps them in the human realm.
Exactly.
So if hatred is this destructive internal poison that ruins your chances at heaven, what is the role of love? Because as we transition into how the author views relationships, love seems to function as a form of spiritual leverage.
That's a great way to put it. In the context of this framework, love is basically an aggressive investment strategy.
An investment strategy.
Yeah. The author states that they choose to love others because love does not create debts that the author has to pay. Instead, radiating love makes others indebted to the author.
And the quote that really stands out here is, "While I strive not to owe anyone, I aim to have others owe me."
Right. The metaphysical logic here is that the more lives owe them, the more glorious and harmonious their existence becomes. Their life space expands.
So it's not about warm, fuzzy feelings.
No, the text claims this mirrors the wisdom of the greatest creator, positing that all life in the universe is indebted to the creator, which is the mechanism by which all follow him.
So it literally functions as spiritual venture capitalism.
Absolutely.
You are walking through life, making seed investments of love in other people, strictly to build your own cosmic equity.
Yeah, and the text reveals a very deliberate strategy about who the author chooses to invest in. They talk about collecting gems.
Right, the gems. Who are the gems?
The gems of the human world are identified in the text as the Chanyuan celestials. The author essentially views these individuals as enlightened peers, or like spiritual elites who have already cracked the code to this heavenly transaction.
So they're networking with the top tier.
Exactly. The author collects these bonds to bring to the heavenly kingdom, curating their own bespoke afterlife environment to make it more beautiful and joyful.
Meanwhile, they explicitly state that they no longer form bonds with worldly mortals.
Connecting with worldly people is deemed a bad investment.
A bad investment.
That's harsh. Well, the text argues that bonding with those tied to earthly desires means inheriting their endless suffering and boundless pain. Since earthly life is fleeting, the author chooses to network upward.
Right.
They associate exclusively with sages, bodhisattvas, angels, celestials, and Buddhas.
The idea of upward networking your way through the pearly gates is just fascinating to me. The logic being that when those higher tier beings ascend, the author's carefully cultivated bonds with them will act as a guide.
They're hitching a ride on the coattails of their spiritual network.
Yeah. And there's a real urgency to this, too. They mention the impermanence of life and the need to be prepared so they don't turn into a pillar of salt, tormented by regret for millennia.
That urgency is definitely present.
But this brings us to what might be the most jarring quote in the entire source material. The author writes, "I love you, but not for your sake. It is for mine. I help you, but not for your sake. It is for me. I dedicate myself to you, but not for your sake. It is to fulfill my own purpose."
It's a very bold statement.
Treating human connection purely as a transactional vehicle for your own ascension, it just feels incredibly cold. Wow. Is there a danger here in losing what it actually means to be human?
It definitely strips away the romanticism we usually attach to human connection, but consider the profound psychological safety this extreme honesty provides.
Psychological safety.
Yeah, think about your own relationships and how much human conflict stems from unacknowledged expectations.
Oh, for sure.
We do something selfless for a partner or a friend, and then we secretly harbor resentment when they don't appreciate the sacrifice enough or, reciprocate in the exact way we wanted.
Yeah, we hold on to it. We use it as ammunition later.
Exactly. But by adopting the author's framework, by admitting up front that everything you do is ultimately for yourself, You completely eliminate the possibility of that resentment.
Because you're not doing it for them anyway.
Right. You never tell someone you sacrificed for them because you own the fact that every choice, every act of care was a strategic move for your own ultimate goal.
That makes a lot of sense.
The author explicitly says, I never claim to do anything for others, not for your good. No, everything I do is for myself. It frees the other person from the heavy burden of your expectations, and it frees you from the bitterness of feeling unappreciated.
You are entirely responsible for your own ledger. No one else can hold you emotionally hostage, but you also cannot place the blame for your unhappiness on anyone else's shoulders.
Exactly. And the author concludes the essay by demanding not to be called noble, selfless, or a servant of humanity.
They don't want the titles.
Not at all. They actively reject all those labels because they know, at the core, their motivation is pure self-interest.
So let's bring this all back to you listening right now. We have just navigated a massive, highly detailed philosophical paradox today.
A very complex one.
The author of this text absolutely refuses to be called a good person. They demand to be seen as entirely selfish. Yet, their pursuit of this cosmic payout, their desperation to maintain a pristine life structure and ascend to heaven, results in a life where they honor their parents, protect animals, leave the rainforest alone, refuse to act on hatred, let go of revenge, and actively spread love to the people around them.
It forces a massive re-examination of our own daily motivations.
Imagine how your interactions might change if you operated on this exact framework, even just for a week.
Just as an experiment.
Yeah. What if you completely remove the pressure to be an inherently good person? What if you stopped trying to be perfectly selfless and instead focused on being strategically, brilliantly selfish?
Paying off every debt you owe.
Keeping your side of the street perfectly clean, refusing to drink the poison of anger when someone wrongs you. Not to be a saint, but simply to protect your own peace and your own future.
It suggests that a harmonious, functional life might actually be more achievable when we stop pretending our motives are purely altruistic and, start managing our actions with clear-eyed pragmatism.
And that leaves us with a final, lingering question to ponder long after this deep dive ends. Think back to that cosmic checkout counter.
Right.
If a society functions perfectly, if everyone pays their debts to nature, respects their neighbors, and treats each other with care simply to keep their own spiritual ledgers at zero, does it actually matter if the internal engine driving it all is pure, unadulterated selfishness? Or is true, pure altruism just a comforting myth we tell ourselves to feel a little bit better about the cosmic transactions we make every single day?
A truly fascinating perspective to consider.
Something to think about the next time you catch your reflection in the mirror. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.